Pay attention to me.
No.
Oh. Okay.
Say something funny then. That was pretty funny.
A little breathing exercises.
Brr, brr, ma, ma. The girls that get it, get it. The girls that don't, don't. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
it's from High School Musical.
Yeah.
And the
you know
second
that.
bit was from TikTok.
Oh, okay. I believe you.
The whole brr, brr, ma, ma. It's from High School Musical.
Okay, I believe you. You know how long it's been since I've seen that movie? Way too long.
Well, definitely not since we've been married, so I'm about to change that. Who
Okay.
needs sleep when you have High School Musical to
Who
watch?
needs... I mean, me?
No.
Because I don't have High School Musical to watch.
Yes, you do.
I don't, though.
And I wear the pants in this relationship. I mean, not currently, because I'm not wearing pants right now. But cut that out. Okay.
What's that Brad Paisley song? It's not who wears the pants, it's who wears the skirt.
Are you wearing a skirt?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah.
But what about that Brad Paisley song about like how men aren't really men anymore?
Good point. Touche.
I don't really know where this conversation is going.
Me neither.
Hey everyone.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Fam Damily.
You're all part of the Dammers. I don't know.
Is that what we decided? I don't think we actually did
really
decide.
know. Y'all are part of the big fam Damily. So you just get to listen to these wonderful little tangents that we go on.
Mm-hmm.
And our breathing exercises.
That lead to nowhere.
All in favor of Myles watching High School Musical, say aye. Aye. Oh, did you hear that? Everyone's in favor.
I think I only heard no one.
No, I said it.
I didn't hear
Am
you.
I no one?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
You have no proof of it.
You know what, Myles? Tell me a story.
Okay. All right. Before I tell you a story,
Okay.
I want you to guess. I'm going to list out some facts here real quickly, and I want you to take a guess
Bet.
of who this is.
Michael Jackson.
Okay. So to start off, he was a president of the United States.
Trump.
No. He was considered a romantic. He wrote thousands of love letters to his wife.
Huh. Is it Lincoln?
He was 90 years old when he died.
Oh, okay.
He was Harvard educated
Ooh.
at age 15.
15?
Mm-hmm. He practiced law in Boston. He was not a slaveholder.
That's a plus.
His son also became president.
It's Bush.
He was the first president to live in the White House.
So it's not Bush.
It's not Bush.
Okay. Which other president had a son become president?
Hold on. He was the first to propose the idea of a U.S. military academy.
Okay.
And final clue, I hope you get this. He was the second president.
I'm about to really embarrass myself
Kourtney.
here.
Oh no.
Can I tell you? I know like 4 things. I know about 4 presidents, not things.
Name them. You already said like 3 just now. He said Lincoln, Trump, and Bush.
And I know Obama.
You know Obama.
Personally. I'm related to him. He is my 19th cousin, 5 times removed.
Wow. So do you guys get together at family reunions and stuff?
No.
I've never seen him.
I know about
Who was the first president?
George Washington.
There you go. Third president.
I don't know.
Really?
No, I don't.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what happened. I think I was sick the day that everybody learned that little jingle about the presidents. And then I was like, what are you guys talking about? And then they just continued to do it. And I never caught on. Mm-hmm. And then I went to history classes and stuff. But those were the classes that I was like writing letters to my friends to pass in the hallway.
Gotcha. I have to admit that I only know really kind of the first, well, I guess 3 presidents. I couldn't tell you who the 4th one was. maybe. I don't think.
Yeah, I could tell you very little.
I could tell you the 6th and 7th. They're
Wow.
part of the story.
Oh.
And yeah, and the current ones, like what's his name? Clinton.
I thought you were meeting President Biden. I was like, wow.
I guess him too.
Yeah, I've always been kind of embarrassed about my lack of knowledge of presidents.
That's okay.
People are always like, oh, there's this many presidents and this president was this number. And I'm like, huh?
Okay.
Are you speaking French? Because you might as well be.
Okay, well, I hope this name rings a bell to you. John Adams.
Nice.
You don't know? Do you know who that
Okay,
is?
yes.
So, John Adams.
John Adams. I knew the name. I didn't know which number he was.
Do you know what his whole role in America was?
Well, he didn't own slaves.
He didn't own slaves. Good job.
He was the first one to live in the White House.
Wow, how'd you know that?
He also did this really cool thing about recommending the academy for something with military.
Yeah, good job.
See, I know.
Well, I'm really impressed that you knew that.
I told you, I know so much about presidents. Quiz me. Just kidding. Don't do that.
Okay. So anyway, John Adams, second president. He was a descendant of Henry Adams, and Henry Adams was the first of the Adams family, didn't it?
So when does Wednesday come in?
Right. Later on.
After Tuesday?
Anyway, enough with the puns. So Henry Adams was the first of his family to emigrate from England and it was actually one of the first colonizers of the Massachusetts Bay Colony.
Nice.
And that was around 1636.
Time doesn't exist. We've established this.
Exist. I like the older stories, you know.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Okay, keep going.
So, and not much else is said of his ancestors besides really his father. It goes into a little bit, but a lot of it is just kind of like, oh, he did this. Like, he was a farmer. He was whatever it was.
Sure.
But anyway, so John Adams was born to John Adams Sr. So this is another story where
everyone's named John?
Everyone's name is John.
Wow.
Everyone's name is John.
You know, I'm going to make a prediction.
Okay.
In 30 years, there's not going to be a single kid named John.
Yeah, because it's just outplayed, and then 500 years from now,
what am I talking about?
John.
It's going to live on forever.
Yeah,
that's going to be the longest standing name in the history of names.
Where did the name John come from? We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to go into that.
Oh, man. We could do a whole episode on John. I mean, we have the past 3 episodes. Okay, good.
We like John. So, he was born to John Adams Sr. and Susanna Boylston Adams. And he was born 30th of October, 1735. So, John Sr.
Sounds so Australian.
Huh?
30th October.
October 30th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Americanize yourself, man.
America.
Shut up.
All right. So, John Sr. was a farmer and a cobbler who cobbled things.
Okay.
Like that Gilmore Girls episode we watched the other night when Kirk was dressed up in the old-timey militia outfit.
Who
Never
are
mind.
these people? It's Kirk.
Yeah, that episode. Anyway, so he was a cobbler. So, a shoemaker, basically. Did you know what a cobbler was before
I
that?
did not, but
Okay.
I've already embarrassed myself enough, so I wasn't going to ask.
Okay, sounds good. Just ask questions, because I don't know a lot either.
Sure.
All right, so John Adams Sr., he was also a deacon in his church, a lieutenant in the militia, and a selectman, or a town councilman, who supervised the schools and the roads.
Is this the president or his dad?
His dad.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So John Adams, the president.
Senior.
Yes, his dad, the one who was not president.
Got you.
Yep. So he was a pretty busy guy, and then his mother Susanna was the daughter of Peter Boylston and Anne White Boylston, and her family was very well respected in New England. They were like leading scientists and doctors and everything in the area. They were great. 2 honorable mentions to them was a cousin of hers who was a benefactor of Harvard, and a guy named Zabdiel Boylston, who was the first American physician to perform surgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Isn't it? All right.
Hopefully that surgery went well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people still have surgeries today, so there must have been something good about it.
Well, just they've adapted to the times and everything and whatever. I don't know. Technology's advanced a lot since then as well,
True.
I'm pretty sure.
True.
So John Sr. and Susanna, so John Adams Sr., the father, and Susanna lived on a farm in what is now Quincy, Massachusetts. And John had purchased this in 1720.
Okay.
So he owned this before they were married.
Okay.
And he was primarily a farmer during the growing season, and then he was a cobbler during the winter time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And as mentioned as well, he was also a selectman and a deacon. So going back to that. His house was often visited by local and church officials to discuss business and religion. And John Jr., he went on to say, even in the obituary and everything, he said he would always talk about how much he had, how much he respected his father and forefathers for that matter. And he praised each of them as independent country gentlemen who never had gone bankrupt, didn't gamble, nor committed fraud. Ever committed fraud. So good for them.
Yeah, that's pretty good word.
Mm-hmm. So John and Susanna had 3 sons. There was John, the one who went on to become president. Mm-hmm. And he was the oldest. And then Peter, not much is said about Peter, and Elihu, I think is how you pronounce it. Elihu, whatever. It's Elihu. Names were different back then. All right, and Peter was a farmer, and he was also a militia captain of Braintree, which is the area they lived in. That was the name of in Massachusetts, the town that they lived, Braintree.
Cool.
And Elihu, how do you pronounce that? He was a company commander during the American Revolution, and he died early in the war in 1775 from dysentery, which is bloody diarrhea.
Oh.
He died from bloody diarrhea.
I was about to say, I know what that is. I did not know that.
What did you think it was?
I don't know.
I didn't know what it was before this either, because I had to look it up. I'm like, oh, that sounds horrible.
That's a horrible way to die.
That's a horrible way to die.
They didn't
So
even have Taco Bell back then.
Imagine how worse it would have been.
It's like that movie. Was it A Million Ways to Die in the West?
Oh my gosh.
Neil Patrick Harris in the hat scene. You know what I'm talking about? He got they slipped him like some laxatives in his drink because he had like a shootout the next day, and he went out to do a shootout and got pretty bad diarrhea.
Yeah. Oh, what a time.
Seth MacFarlane humor right there.
For sure. All right. So John Adams Jr. So his formal education began when he was age 6. He started at a Dane school for boys and girls.
Okay.
Which was a small private school, and it was hosted in just like the teacher's house or whatever.
Oh, cool.
And then Braintree Latin School, in which he learned Latin, logic, rhetoric, and arithmetic.
Okay.
Now, despite his academic success, so he was doing well in school at the time, he didn't like school, and he was often late or absent, and he didn't like his teacher, or what they called master back then, I guess.
Okay.
And he often expressed his desire to become a father, a farmer like his father. I think I need to go to bed.
Yeah, I think so. Just kidding.
Anyway, but his father, he had pushed him to stay in school and saying, "You shall comply with my desires." Those were his words, like, "You shall comply with my desires." And so since his father was, the selectman for the state, and he supervised the schools and everything, he had a little bit of pull on who his teacher would be.
Oh, okay.
So he changed the teacher, and then after that, John, he responded positively to the change.
Cool.
And then age 16, I said 15 before, didn't I? Age 16 was when he went to Harvard. And in adulthood, Adams was much more accepting of education and studied ancient writers and philosophers and in their original language. So he was a smart guy. Because a lot of
Studying
these,
it in their original language, that's really impressive.
right? Because I think it was, Greek. A lot of these philosophers. So learning Latin and Greek, good for him. Good for him. Now his father, he was leading him in the direction to become, a clergyman, a minister. But after John Jr. received his degree, he started to teach in school, a place called Worcester. And then he was doing that while he was trying to figure out what he wanted to be when he grew up.
Very nice.
And then about a year into his teaching, I think he said he taught for 4 years. So about a year later, you need to get this brush away from me. About a year after he graduated, he started to feel a little unsatisfied in his reputation, and then he sought for more. So what he did is decided to become a lawyer.
Wow. Pulling a nice little Kim K on us.
Yeah. And then he wrote to his father about it, and he said that among lawyers he found, quote, noble and gallant achievements, whereas among the ministry and clergy, he said he found, again, quote, pretended sanctity of some absolute dunces.
What?
So he basically was saying that they were fake.
The clergy?
The clergy was fake.
Oof.
Yeah. Slap in the face to his dad, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so come the year 1756 is when John Adams began studying his law. And then 2 years later, 1758, he received his Master of Arts. And then in 1759, he was admitted to the bar because he was over 21.
Cool.
Just kidding. Bad joke, sorry.
No, I was actually about to ask you how old he was.
Good question. So he was born 1735. So he was like 23 years old. 24 years old. Right? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. No, that's cool. Cool.
All right. And then 1761, a man named James Otis Jr. challenged the British law that allowed British troops to search the homes of the people without any warning or reason. So this whole challenging that this guy, James Otis Jr., the whole challenge that he issued to these people really inspired John Adams, and that's kind of what inspired him to go on to the American Revolution. It was like, yeah, British people, they're kind of pig-headed. Same. I think that way too. I'm just kidding.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. So, late 1750s, John fell in love with Hannah Quincy.
Aww.
And then there was one point where it kind of sounded like he was already down on one knee, just about to propose. But then his friends interrupted. And then the moment was kind of lost and never to be found again.
Ever?
Ever again. With this particular girl. But then he met his third cousin, Abigail Smith, which, according to Dwight Schrute, it's great for bloodlines and not technically incest. So it's fine. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying it was normal back then.
Oh, man.
So Abigail Smith, they were third cousins.
No.
And he said initially he wasn't that, attracted to her. He was introduced to her at the same time as her two other sisters. And he said none of them were, quote, fond, nor frank, nor candid. So I guess he had a thing for names. I'm just kidding. Another bad joke. But then he and Abigail, they started to hang out and hit it off a little bit better and get closer a little bit. And they found out that they shared a lot of interests and very similar personality traits and everything.
And the same grandpa, but whatever.
Well, not really. I guess the grandpas were friends, but I don't know. I don't want to go into it too much. They were third cousins. That's all we need to know. So John Adams Sr., so the dad, he died in 1761. And then John Adams Jr. inherited his 9.5-acre farm with the house.
Very nice.
And then they lived there kind of off and on for 23 years.
Him and what's her face?
And Abigail Smith.
Okay.
And then they both married on October 25th, 1964. Abigail's mother was apparently against it, but they went through with it anyway. And then together, John and Abigail had 6 children, and their names were Abigail, who they called Nabby. So Abigail, who they called Nabby, she was born in 1765. And then she was, little kind of a side note, not much going into it, but she was supposed to be married at 18, or she was going to get married at 18. And her father, John Adams, was kind of against it, but he's like, whatever. That didn't end up happening, and she married some other guy later on. I just thought it was funny because I didn't mention this, but Abigail was 15 when they both met. John and Abigail.
18 is way too young.
Yep.
Your mother just turned 19. Give her some time.
Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. And then John Quincy Adams, who was the one who later became president.
Oh!
Ding, ding, ding,
I
ding,
totally
ding.
knew that.
Yeah, you did.
Wow, my 9th grade history teacher would be so ashamed of me right now.
Yeah, we'll get them to listen, and then they can be ashamed of you while they're listening to you.
He probably has no idea who I am anymore.
Probably not. And so he was the 6th president. He was born in 1967. Susanna, who was born in 1968, but she died at age 1.
Aww.
Yeah, pretty sad. And then Charles, who was born in 1770. Thomas, born in 1772. And then the next kid was born 5 years later, Elizabeth. But she was stillborn, so yeah, they lost 2 daughters pretty early into their life.
Oh, that's so sad.
But between that time, it kind of seems like, I guess, they took time off for the war during that time, because it was like, 5 years apart. Everyone else was like 2 years, 1 year.
Yeah.
So all 3 of their sons, so John Quincy, Charles, and Thomas, they all eventually became lawyers. But Charles and Thomas, the 2 younger brothers, were driven to the bottle due to the lack of success. That's what I wrote down, word for word.
Wow.
So basically, they weren't successful in their vocations at all. So they just took up drinking and then died before old age could get to them.
That's so sad.
It is sad. Yep.
What a waste.
I know. But then it says that John Quincy excelled at what he did. And we'll go into a little bit about John Quincy later.
Okay.
So John Adams, he himself was pretty successful up until, when he started getting a little bit more prominence in his career, which started with the Stamp Act of 1765, which was...
I've heard of that.
Yeah. You've heard of it? Do you know what it is?
Nope. Keep going.
So basically, the Stamp Act was just Britain's way of, adding more taxes to the colonies. Trying to get more money out of them to, I guess, support their side of everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You'll get this later on as well, but a lot of what they did to the colonies was kind of unjust. Whereas they took, their delegates, or the delegates from the colonies in the courts and everything, they took their pay and gave them to their own, judges and stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so during this time, John Adams he wrote multiple essays and submitted them to different papers here and there under the pen name Humphrey Plowjogger. I thought it was an interesting name.
That is an interesting name.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about it. Like, I don't know where he got this name. Like, for starters, Humphrey. I mean, I don't know how common of a name that was back then. I don't know many Humphreys around that time. But Plowjogger, I'm just like, they were farmers, I guess. And a lot of the time when they take last names and everything, they kind of tie it to their profession. Mm-hmm. It's like, tailors were once tailors.
Yeah.
And Smiths were blacksmiths and such.
If he really wanted to be, like, inconspicuous, he should have just gone with John.
Just John. That would round it down.
John Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know if he was trying to be inconspicuous. That was just his pen name. So I'm not sure what his ultimate goal was, besides, revolutionizing everything, because that was what he was known for primarily.
Wait. Wouldn't John Adams, like, he could have been considered John Johnson?
Yeah.
No, seriously. Because remember, like, Odinson?
Yeah.
Johnson. John Johnson.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, could have been. Yeah.
John Johnson.
Or Adams, you know. But anyway, the name kind of got me thinking, like, you know, back since, you know, as I was saying, they took their professions and made them last names. So, like, plow jogger, maybe it was like considered like a very tough name because, you know, he jogged with the plow for the fields and everything. I don't know. It just got me thinking about it.
Sense.
Anyway. So
Anywho.
Man, I'm coughing a lot tonight. Thank you. All right, so 1766. After much effort from John Adams and his cousin, Samuel Adams, he was also one of the founding fathers and everything.
I know that name.
Oh, good. You know Samuel Adams, but you don't know John Adams?
I knew John Adams. I just forgot.
We won't go into it. It's okay. So, yeah, after their efforts and everything that they put into kind of repealing the Stamp Act, it worked. And it eased the tensions between Britain and the colonies for a little bit. So John Adams moved his family to Boston in 1768 so he could focus more on his law practice.
Okay.
There they rented a house, and this is kind of where it goes like on and on. Like they had that farm and house in Braintree, but they moved back and forth a lot. And so they moved into a house on Brattle Street, which was locally known as the White House.
Huh.
Yeah. So they lived there for a year, and then they moved to Cold Lane, which I guess is just a different place in this area. And then they moved into a bigger house after that in the city square. You look like you want to ask me a question.
Was it actually the White House?
No.
It was just a house called the White House?
A house called the White House.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
It's like their life's prophecy.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if that's where they got the name from it. They just liked it.
No, people just weren't that original.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, like, the White House wasn't really established up until, you know, John Adams, when he was president.
But you were just going on about people giving their last names after their profession.
True.
Like,
true.
Of course they called it the White House. What else would they call it? It wasn't blue.
The eggshell house. The off-white house. And then they eventually moved into a bigger house in the city square. Then 1767, Britain was again taxing the colonies, which gave rise to more tension and increased violence, which led to more British troops being dispatched to these colonies.
Okay.
Now, with these tensions rising, the colonists, they were kind of looking to take the anger out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they found an opportunity on March 5th, 1770. There was a lone sentry. He had wandered off from his little group, and he was attacked by a group of men and boys. The 8 soldiers that were in his little company, they came to his aid, but then this little mob of men and boys grew to several hundred pretty rapidly.
Wow.
And then these people started throwing all sorts of stuff like snowballs, icicles, stuff like that at these troops. And so 2 of the British troops retaliated by firing into the crowd, killing 5 of the civilians that were attacking them. And this was known as the Boston Massacre.
Oh.
Yeah.
I heard about that once upon a time. Pretty sure it was on a few tests back in my day.
Back in my day. I mean, have you used it since, up until now?
You know, I'm still waiting for that lesson from Miss Rachel. I haven't gotten that far.
We'll get there. All right. So the soldiers, so all 9 of these soldiers and a few of the civilians, they were charged with murder. And when no other attorney would defend them, John Adams stepped up to defend them, which I respect him a lot for doing this, because these were British troops that he started to defend.
Mm-hmm.
And so he basically stepped up, giving no regard to his reputation. He's like, you know, everyone deserves a just trial, you know, going to his lawyer stuff and everything. Being the defendant, he was able to lessen their punishment. So 6 of the soldiers were acquitted, and the 2 other ones, the ones that fired into the crowd, were charged with just manslaughter, and well, not just manslaughter. They were charged with manslaughter,
Which is a
and-
lesser charge.
which
than
is a
murder.
lesser, yeah. And all that they received was just like a branding on their hand.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm sure that would have hurt, but I mean, even so, like, it's better than spending however long they would have, or even death penalty back then
Sure.
for
Yeah.
it. So, of this incident, John Adams said, "It is more important that innocence be protected than it is for guilt to be punished." I wrote that down. That's not pertinent to the story. I just thought that was like really cool.
Pretty
That,
powerful.
his mindset. A lot of people said that John Adams had immovable integrity.
Oh, that's nice.
So, good for him. Good for him.
Immovable.
Uh-huh. Or another synonym for immovable. Basically, he had an opinion and it wouldn't change.
No,
No
I
matter how
like
hard you
it.
try.
I like that word.
Me too. And so this incident, even though, despite the initial probably attacks against his reputation that he had, it actually ended up doing great things for him, including him being the first choice for a vacancy on the Massachusetts legislature.
Wow.
Yeah. Then in 1771, he moved his family back to Braintree, but he kept and stayed in Boston as Boston office. And then about a year later, he got lonely and figured his family would do. Yeah, there were a lot.
Year.
Yeah, there were a lot of letters. I mean, he wrote thousands of love letters to his wife, so I'm sure this
Yeah.
was in between it. But yeah, a year later.
Wow, what a different time.
Yeah, no.
You're gone for 8 hours a day and I lose my mind.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I know, Kourtney, you never leave me alone.
But yeah, so he moved them back to Boston, thinking they could do a little bit better up there with him. Yeah, he moved them all back, and then purchased a larger brick house that was closer to his office. In 1774, things in Boston started to become unstable, so they moved back to Braintree. So there was a lot of back and forth, like I said before.
Sounds like it.
So they were living at the farm again. Then, leading up to the Revolution, John Adams was said to always be more conservative than the other founders.
Okay.
So his thinking was that despite the unjust actions from the British, a revolt was unwarranted.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it sucks what's happening to us, but, retaliation, violence, that kind of stuff isn't the answer. This opinion of his, it kind of started to change around 1772, when the King of England was basically stealing the legislature's pay and giving it to his own judges. John Adams, along with his cousin Samuel and another dude named Joseph Hawley, they decided that independence was better than tyranny, and so that's when they started working a little bit more for independence.
Gotcha.
So come time around the Boston Tea Party. What do you know about the Boston Tea Party?
They were getting mad at Britain for taxing their tea, so they threw it overboard.
Perfect. That's right.
Did I get an A?
You got an A.
Thanks.
Now, John Adams of this event said that it was the grandest event of colonial protest and was necessary action in the fight for independence.
Okay.
Then comes 1774, Samuel, again his cousin Samuel Adams, he instigated the First Continental Congress in response to these quote-unquote intolerable acts. So 4 delegates were chosen, including John Adams, to go to Philly and join a committee. And basically what this committee was doing was writing all their grievances from different areas to King George III, who was the King of England at the time. And so during John Adams' absence while he was in Philly, he and Abigail continued to write, and she mentions that she was struggling, but what he was doing, she was supporting him basically.
Gotcha.
Like, yeah, it sucks here, but what you're doing is important. You need to keep at it.
Yeah.
So, like, respect to her as well. I can't imagine what it's like with, what would that be?
Respect.
Yeah. What would that with 4 kids home at the time is what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, the pause was there. I had to jump in.
Sure. All right. So 1775 come the battles of Lexington and Concord.
I've heard of those.
They were the initial battles to start off the American Revolutionary War.
I know things.
You know things. I'm so proud of you.
Just jog my memory a little bit.
Yep.
I promise I grew up in America.
And then May 10th, 1775.
I'm getting a history lesson from the Australian. Sorry, go ahead.
You're okay. I did a lot of reading on this, so I mean, if you did reading, you'd probably tell me more and know more about this, but I didn't know too much about John Adams before this, but like I feel like his story is kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you're telling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're okay.
Go ahead.
So May 10th, 1775 was the Second Continental Congress.
Okay.
And John Adams, he was the leader of the Massachusetts delegation. And in this Congress, he voiced his opinion on basically his opinion was if retaliation is practical, it's acceptable.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So in June of that year, 1775, he nominated George Washington as the commander-in-chief of the army. And of George Washington, he said, well, he basically commended his skill and experience and excellent universal character.
Yeah, this George Washington fella sounds pretty important.
Yeah, never heard of him before this.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. All right, so Great Britain, they tried many times to ease the tension between them and the colonies, including the Olive Branch petition.
Yes.
Yes. But all of these attempts, John Adams was opposed to and rejected them.
Okay.
Then October of the same year, 1775, he was appointed chief judge in Massachusetts, in the Massachusetts Superior Court. So he's, making his way up in the world. He's getting there, getting a big reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first half of 1776, John Adams was getting impatient with how slowly things were moving with the whole independence movement. And so during this time, he started to establish rapport with Thomas Jefferson. And then that's when they kind of get together and become buddies. And then, so Thomas Jefferson, actually, he was initially against independence. But as time went on, he was kind of, faced with the same thing. Like, it has to happen because this is getting ridiculous.
Sure. Yeah.
So Adams picked 5 people to draft the Declaration of Independence. Pop quiz. Do you know who they were?
John Hancock. He
No.
signed it.
He signed
the
it.
biggest. John Adams.
Yeah, John Adams was one.
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin was another.
Sam Adams. No.
He was not one of them.
George Washington.
Mm-mm.
Wow. Thomas Jefferson.
Yes. I have him written as TJ. I'm going to refer to him as TJ now. That's probably disrespectful. Thomas Jefferson.
Sir. Okay, I don't know who the
That's
last
okay.
two.
I don't know who the other two were either. It's Robert R. Livingston and Roger Sherman.
That's my next guess.
All right. So TJ, Thomas Jefferson. I have their initials written down just to make my notes a little bit more consolidated. So anyway, Thomas Jefferson thought that John Adams should be the writer of the Declaration of Independence, but John Adams convinced their little committee otherwise for Thomas Jefferson to do it. And Thomas Jefferson went on to say, like, all sorts of things like, you're smart, you're great, all these things. But then John Adams turned around and he's like, I'm not half as good of a writer as you are. And he went on and said, like, all these things about Thomas Jefferson and basically commending him for all of his skills and everything. He's like, so that's why you should do it.
These two had a little bromance
They had a little bromance going on. And that's funny because I'll get to this in a little bit as well, but I'll mention it now too. But he and Thomas Jefferson, it said in the article I was reading that they were longtime friends but political rivals. So I'm like, they were probably still buddies even during their, campaigns against each other for presidency.
Well, I mean,
But
they had a lot of nice things to say about each other.
They did.
Little brown to rub on each other's noses right there.
Right. All right. So anyway, a lot of things happened up until the end of the War for Independence.
Okay.
We know the signing of the Declaration of Independence and everything. So
John Hancock.
John Hancock. That's the big giveaway for this. Or takeaway, I mean.
I
The big
knew
takeaway
that
for
was.
this. So in October 1776, John Adams was able to return with his family, but then just to leave again to resume his congressional duties in January 1777. So he was only with them for 4 months. 3 months, 4 months.
Home for the holidays.
Yeah, 3 months. That's basically what it was. He then became commissioner to France, and he had a lot of diplomatic. He went on to have like a lot of diplomatic relationships with a whole bunch of European places. France being among the first, and he said he was a big backer up of this whole international treaty kind of thing, because he claimed that it was important for independence to maintain his independence for the U.S.
Okay.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you have trade with other places, then you're set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So John Adams, while Thomas Jefferson was working on the Declaration of Independence, John Adams had been working on this thing called the Model Treaty, which was basically a template for commercial treaties to make with foreign countries. Then February 1778, both he and his son John Quincy Adams. So John was how old was he? 9. So 11. So John Quincy Adams was 11 when they left together for France, and during this trip to France, it's a long way by a ship. They went through treacherous storms and they were pursued by British ships. One of which, one of these ships, John Adams actually helped to not claim. What's the word? But basically take over the ship.
Yeah. Okay.
So go, John. And
it's
then,
like,
just like what?
Like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's weird to think that these movies are actually based off of things that happened.
Right.
Sorry.
Right, like the Kraken. That was a real thing.
Davy Jones Locker.
Fishman.
I don't know what that is.
Fishmen. Men that are fish. Anyway.
Yeah, true stories.
So April 1st, 1778, they arrived in France, and there they attempted to kind of negotiate with them and gain the French Navy's support, but they were rejected.
Oh.
He went on more expeditions up until about 1788, between different countries trying to get diplomatic relations.
Sure.
And then in 1778, he returned to Braintree, and he lived there again as a farmer. But the first election was approaching, and everyone was saying, like, George Washington, he's going to be the president. So everyone was expecting that, but the vice president position, everyone was saying, like, it should probably go to a northerner. And John Adams was the primary contender for it.
Oh, cool.
Now, so Alexander Hamilton, he didn't want that guy. He didn't want John Adams to be president at this time, so he convinced. So it said that at least 7 of the people that voted for George Washington, Alexander Hamilton convinced to not vote for John Adams.
Wow.
So he really didn't want John to be the president.
Okay.
Yeah. So John Adams served as vice president for 2 terms with George Washington as the president, and then George Washington claimed, "I'm not going to serve a third." He refused. So good for him. So the presidency after George Washington was between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. That's where the whole, longtime friends, political rivals thing comes in.
Sure.
So it was a pretty close call in the end of it, but ultimately John Adams won, and he was sworn into office in 1797. Now, as a president, I don't want to say too much against him because he was a hard worker and everything, but as a president, he didn't have a lot of things going for him. He did a couple of accomplishments, but some of them were also kind of unpopular.
Oh, okay.
For example, the Alien and Sedition Acts. There were 4 laws that applied restriction to immigration and speech, which was highly unpopular. And John Adams, he was a huge patriot and everything, and so I'm not sure what his big opposition to immigration was. I guess they were trying to get their own country settled before they started accepting other people, but I don't know. I didn't read too much into that. And then another, I guess, accomplishment you can say was the Quasi War, which is an undeclared war between 1798 to 1800. That was between the French and the U.S.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So he was part of that too. But then, that's really, I mean, there are a couple other ones, but I'm not going to go into them, one for time's sakes, and two because they're just, like I said, not very popular among the people.
And the thing is, too, is that, this was over 200 years ago.
Yes.
And so politics back then are very different from politics now, but opinions are still very strong.
Yes.
And so, without getting too into it, just because, I don't know.
Because I don't like politics.
Right. We don't need to talk too much about the real political side of it other than what we know about history. So,
True.
Just play it safe.
Anyway. So, giving an honorable mention to his son, John Quincy, the 6th president. He was a pretty cool kid. Much of his childhood he spent in Europe with his father as a diplomat.
Cool.
And then when he returned to the U.S., he started his own legal practice, which went on to be very successful. And in 1794, he became an ambassador to the Netherlands. And then 1817 to 1825, he was the Secretary of State. 1824, this was the election that he was appointed as the president, and there was not really any clear winner.
Oh.
And so the House of Representatives, I guess they had them stand up for a debate, and then they were going to decide who should be the next president, and John Quincy was the one who won that.
Huh.
And his presidency kind of sounded, I mean, I don't want to say boring, because I don't think it was boring, but what they said, it was harmonious and productive. So, like, pretty peaceful, and he got stuff done.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good
So
on him.
Good job, John Quincy. Anyway.
I was thinking, they traveled throughout Europe to get, these people on their side.
Mm-hmm.
If they can do that, I can set up an appointment with the dentist. I just have to pick up the phone. I don't have to get on a boat for months.
To think they got on a boat to go and be like, hey, we should be allies.
Pirates.
Just to be rejected. Whereas what you have to do is just pick up a simple phone.
Yeah.
And call them and say, hey, I need an appointment.
It's a huge commitment. I don't know if I have that in me.
I believe in you. I believe in you.
Is there more to your story?
No, that's really it.
Cool.
I think John Adams, up to his, his whole career before his presidency was pretty fascinating. There's a whole TV series about his contributions and everything.
Really?
And I've seen a couple episodes of it.
What is it?
That was really cool. It's called John Adams.
Oh, okay.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I didn't know about him, but
I know.
I would be interested to learn more about his presidency too, and like the things that he did accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Because popular or not, like I feel like it's still good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I can list them off if you want me to.
Sure, yeah, if you have some of the accomplishments.
Yeah, for sure. Give me a minute.
Just because, I really haven't had a ton of knowledge of like the presidents of the United States and some of the things that have happened, and I feel like it makes it so that I don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to political views.
Mm-hmm.
Because how could I? Like, I don't even know the history. And I do, but I really don't. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I get it. I get what you mean. So, there's the failed Peace Commission and XYZ affair. And the XYZ affair was a political and diplomatic episode in 1797 and 1798.
Mm-hmm.
and it involved a confrontation between the United States and Republican France.
Oh, okay.
So that was what led to the Quasi-War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There is the Alien Sedition Acts. I mentioned that one. That's the one where it's 4 laws that put restrictions on immigration and speech.
Okay.
There was Freeze Rebellion. So this was, leading up to it, it was about taxation from by the federal government to help pay for the military build-up for the Quasi-War.
Got you.
Then Federalist Divisions and Peace.
Okay.
So John Adams was known as a Federalist as opposed to a Republican.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with, Alexander Hamilton. Actually, I feel it's also important to kind of talk about after his presidency as well.
Okay.
Because afterwards he went back to farming at Peacefield in the town of Quincy. And then he started to work on his autobiography. And so that's where we get like a lot of the information, because he was big into diary writing. He would take notes on everything. So props
That's
to
cool.
him. Yeah.
Good for him.
I used to be like that. Then I stopped.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Love.
John
Myles.
Adams. Oh, we were going different directions. Now I'm just picturing back then.
I'm picturing you with cute little pigtails next to the window as it snows.
We could probably do pigtails right now.
Oh, for sure.
So it says that he was generally pretty quiet on public matters.
Mm-hmm.
I guess from the sounds of it, he was kind of against Jefferson as president, and well, not necessarily him as president, but his actions that he took as president. And he said that instead of opposing systematically any administration, running down their characters and opposing all their measures, right or wrong, we ought to support every administration as far as we can in justice. So that kind of, hints at he wasn't really a fan of it, but it's like, he's the president, we got to respect what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I really respect his attitude towards things.
Yeah, he sounds like an upstanding citizen.
Yeah. Ex-president too. It says he also did privately criticize the president as well.
What's that like?
I don't know, never heard of it. So after Jefferson retired from public life, Adams became more vocal, and he actually ended up publishing 3-year marathon of letters to the Boston Patriot newspaper. And he refuted line by line Hamilton's 1800 pamphlet.
Wow.
Whatever that is. Maybe I should read about that too. But yeah, so I guess, since Jefferson wasn't president anymore, there weren't really many more repercussions that he could face.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, John Adams was a cool dude.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
Yeah.
It's like the first time in a decade that I've learned about the U.S. history, and it was actually interesting. So
yeah,
thanks.
You're welcome. It's actually kind of funny as well because Ben Franklin went on a lot of these expeditions with him as well, and it was talking about how much Ben Franklin drove John Adams mad. Like he would get annoyed so bad.
That's funny.
By Ben Franklin, because he was very Ben Franklin was kind of a sleazeball.
So I've heard.
So yeah, and so he, what he would do, he was very, I guess, charismatic, because he wasn't a very good looking guy from the paintings, at least from what I've seen.
You weren't into that?
No, I wasn't. He had like a weird pot belly, and he had a weird face.
You weren't into that.
So I guess he was pretty charismatic, and he basically a people pleaser. Telling people whatever to make sure they're okay and that he is in good standing with the people he's talking to. And that drove John Adams mad. He was like, stand up for yourself, have an opinion.
Sure.
So they were very, very opposite when it comes to that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But anyway.
Cool. I like that
end.
Story.
Yeah.
I don't like that he married his third cousin, but I need to just move on past that.
It happened back then a lot.
Yeah, that's why we're all so messed up today.
Maybe that's why Ben Franklin looked funny. But anyway, yeah. If you're interested in American history and you haven't already, watch that John Adams doc. It's not a documentary, but it's based on history.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll watch it. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. This was a good episode. We have over 100 downloads.
Woohoo!
So that's fun. We're very excited about that. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being, again, so supportive. I know I've said it 5 times so far. I'm going to keep saying it until it's hit 1 million.
And then,
Just kidding.
then we're not going to be appreciative anymore.
Yeah. I do cap my appreciation. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, the end.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.